Greetings everyone, and welcome to Keeping Up with Papa Life After Work, where we learn how one man manages to keep himself busy, physically active, and somewhat mentally engaged after retirement with projects. Today's project, well, I have an electrical issue here in my pop-up camper. It has to do with this guy right here. It appears to be a short of some sort somewhere in the camper. I need to trace it down. Let's check it out. Really leads me to aha! Thought what I should have done was plug. Welcome back, and as I mentioned, I have developed a little bit of an issue with the electrical system here on the camper. Here's a bit of a backstory for you and what I think might be going on. It has to do with this guy. Let me get out of the way. Recently I installed a kill switch or a battery disconnect up by the battery, which is a great idea to have on a camper. There wasn't one before. It's off right now, and whenever I turn that switch on, well, watch the meter down there. Very good, it came on just like it should. Now watch what happens when I turn it back off. You know, that in and of itself is not an issue. It makes sense. I'm on shore power right now. I'm on pure battery power. And if I shut the battery power off, the system is shutting itself down. Beep is fine. It gets more complicated than that. Watch the radio. Let me turn it back on. Radio's lit up. Looking around the corner, the meter over there for the LP sensor is lit up. Everything is as it should be, right? Well, there's one more step to throw in here. This is the light outside the door. When I turn this on, well, watch what happens now to the meter. Here we go. Uh-oh. That can't be right. Now, the light is lit up. Let me turn that light back off. Back to normal. So for some reason that light is triggering a fault, and it gets worse. Back to the radio. Let me turn the outdoor light back on. Power disappears to the radio. Let me turn that outdoor light off. Radio comes back, and it continues to get worse. Here's the light switch for the entire camper. Turn this on. Ooh, well, I have a little bit of light coming out of two of the lights. Flicker on a third one. And that's really it. Let me show you. Here's a light partially lit up. A light partially lit up. This light is flickering on and off. And the unit on the floor is, again, lit up red. So without a doubt, somewhere in the system I have a short. I need to find it. In the interest of full transparency, normally I would say something like, yeah, I figured this out already, and here's what the problem was, and here's how I fixed it. No, that's not the case now. I have no idea, really, no good idea what's causing this. I can think of two things right off the top of my head. First is this unit maybe going bad, so I'm going to check the wiring on that. Second, as you're probably aware, I've been painting the outside of the camper, so I had the back torn apart, I had the front torn apart. I've been in there messing with wiring, particularly on the back here where this guy is. And I may have pinched a wire putting it all back together. And that's going to be a lot of fun to try and find that, because I've got to do a lot of disassembling on something I've already previously disassembled and assembled, and it's not fun. Third may be that light I installed. Now I installed that light out for the side, the outdoor light. It's brand new. I put it in, it was working fine prior to me getting into the system here and tearing everything apart and maybe pinching a wire. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is take that out of the loop, because that's exhibiting a very strange characteristic. So we'll turn that one off and see if I have something wired wrong there. Take it out of the loop, and if it fixes everything, I know that's where my problem is. If it doesn't fix anything, I'll do the same thing with this. I'll pull it out, check for a wiring anomaly of some sort, disconnect it if necessary, and and then see if that fixes the problem. If that doesn't fix the problem, I'm back to my third option, which is I pinched a wire when I reassembled the back end of the camper. Not what I'm hoping it turns out to be. Let's start off with the outdoor light. This should be a very simple disassembly. And by the way, this beeping noise that it makes only happened, and I noticed this after I had first installed the battery disconnect. So perhaps that's got something to do with it. Well, that's weird. Well, this looks fine. You know, it's possible it's not grounded well because I painted everything. It doesn't seem likely. It's only 2 wires. I mean, you really can't make a mistake. But boy, those things aren't holding well. So, round 1, let's check the ground wire here. It's possible. Alright, this is out of the loop now, so let's turn this back on and see if something changes. Gas monitor is working. Radio's on. How about power to the lights? Well, lights on, lights on. Whoa, big difference. Let's take a look. Well, this light was just flickering. It's working fine. This light appears to be working fully on one side. Ooh, partial bulb light up on the other. That's really strange. That's not good news. And then this one has got a partial lit bulb. That didn't fix my problem. It's somewhere else. So this really leads me to believe I've got a short. Huh. That just flipped over to red. Taking a closer look, that red says fault. So we have a fault somewhere for sure. Is it inside this unit? Or is it somewhere else? The mute button. Yeah. This thing's 19 years old. This thing is 19 years old. I wouldn't be surprised if it's got an issue and that's causing everything. But maybe that reads electrical fault throughout the entire camper. So, next move, we pull that out and take it out of the loop. Looks like it's held in place with 2 Phillips head screws. I'll try and stay out of the way of the camera here as much as possible. Woo. Starting off, this wire insulation right here is compromised. However, the wire is not broken, but it's pretty badly corroded. Aha! Look at this. That is not connected to anything. In other words, that should be connected. That's the negative wire, or the ground wire. And in here, I just found where it goes. There is the other end. It goes to a white wire. That's weird. Not a lot of slack. I should be able to get in there with a wire nut and tie those 2 back together. So right now this is completely disconnected. Let's see what happens when I turn power back on to the rest of the system. With this out of the loop and not being a short, if that's the problem, everything else should continue to work, or should be working. Turning on every single light in the building. This one's still a little funky looking. The shower light's good. That one's definitely low. This one looks correct. That one over there I can't reach to see if the other switch comes on or not, but it looks bad. To be honest, there's one more thing I need to do, which is plug this thing into shore power, because my battery could be drained down to the point where it's not delivering enough DC power. So let me do that real quick. This is what you call process of elimination. Every light in the building running off of shore power is at full speed. So I do not have a circuit short somewhere, with the exception of that one that was down there at the CO2 monitor. I'm going to put the outdoor door light back in, see how that works. Well, the outdoor light is back in the circuit and working perfectly. No issue there. Alright, tools of the trade. Wire strippers, electrical tape, and a wire nut. Okay, 15 minutes later, 4 trips back down to the garage gathering tools and a variety of other items, and I finally came up with a way to make this work. I simply could not get this wire inside of here where that wire was to connect it with a wire nut. So I got a second piece of wire, which I was able to get in there. I pre-inserted that wire into a wire nut and kind of twisted it where it was locked. Grabbed a hold of the other wire with a pair of vice grips, and then got a wire nut on the inside. And so now we have power. So let me do this. I'm going to go out and disconnect the shore power, hook all this up, and then come back in and go through our little exercise to see what works and what doesn't work. Be right back. You know what? Scratch that. I just hit the main breaker inside here, and I still had lights, so I had the battery switch on outside. So I turned that off, and we have no power to this unit anywhere at all. So that goes into there. Get out of the way. Without putting the screws back, let's run our little exercise. First, I'm going to turn on DC power from the battery. The battery, by the way, has been charging now for 15 or 20 minutes, so it should be enough power to make it work properly. Alright, green light. Next, we have DC power, green light to this. Let's see if any lights come on. Well, no point in asking that question. I didn't turn them off. They're all on. Every light is on, nice and bright. Let me turn on the outside light. It works as well. Nothing is beeping. There are no issues at all. Take a look at the lights. Running off of DC power. Battery power only. Good lighting on every fixture. How about that? An afterthought for you that I think really bears mentioning. This kind of came to me this morning as I was taking a drive somewhere. It's very possible that my entire issue as far as the lights not working properly, and quite frankly probable, is due to the fact that the battery was mostly discharged. If you have a badly discharged battery, and I've looked this up to confirm it, your voltage is low and it'll run lights, but it won't run lights well. It'll cause a lot of flickering, and that's what we were having inside of the camper. The potential red herring was that red light, fault light coming on the CO2 sensor. That indicated there was some sort of a fault occurring to me there, which is what triggered me to pull the sensor out and take a look at it. Well, it turns out that that was a very wise move because there was a wiring issue at that sensor. However, if that sensor was taken out of the loop, it shouldn't cause the flickering or low voltage issue that occurred on the balance of the lights. There are two types of circuitry when you wire something. This is done both in electricity and in plumbing. One's called series, one's called parallel. When you wire something in series, you start at, say for example, outlet number 1, you run to outlet number 2, go through outlet number 2, you go to outlet number 3, go through outlet number 3, etc., all the way down the line. If you do that, when you get to outlet number 2, you have a little less voltage at that outlet. By the time you get down to the 4th or 5th or 6th outlet, you have a lot less voltage. So to get around that, you do what's called parallel wiring. You run your wire from outlet number 1, and you run your wire to number 2, and you don't run it through the outlet. You just tap off of this feed line and go to that outlet. and you go to the next one and tap off of that feed line and go to the next one. You do the same thing in plumbing, by the way, and you'll have, if you don't do that, you'll have a lot less water pressure at the end of the run than you do at the beginning of the run if you run it in series versus parallel. Voltage is the same exact thing. I'm not 100% certain that this camper is not wired in series, because if it were wired in series, you would have voltage drop from fixture to fixture to fixture, and that's kind of what we had. For example, when I turned on the outdoor light right beside the door, it lit up brightly. Everything else downstream from that got weaker and weaker and weaker, and that's an indication that perhaps that light is first in line and the other lights are further downstream from that. If you have a battery that's fully charged with plenty of voltage in it, it will push plenty of current all the way downstream, and you'll have good light at the end of that string of lights. It should not be wired that way. And actually, now that I think of it, when I took the little outdoor light out of the stream, everything else still functioned the way it was functioning, which was poorly. It was not lit up well. So perhaps the fault down at the CO2 sensor really was the problem all along. I don't know for sure. I probably will never have any way of knowing for certain. It's just an interesting mental exercise at this point. You know, as an afterthought, what I should have done was plug the entire camper into shore power initially and see if I had the same issue under shore power that I had under just battery power alone. Too late. No way at this point I'm ever going to be able to figure that out. Doesn't really matter. It works, and I'm happy with that. Well, I stand corrected, or perhaps I'm sitting corrected. I turned the system on inside, checked the lights out, and they were flickering, not doing well, like they had low voltage. I turned on the outdoor light, and it shut pretty much everything down on the inside, just like it did yesterday. So I have a voltage issue of some sort that has come back. Now, I did not fully charge this battery. I just kind of let it run for a little bit yesterday on shore power, and then didn't do anything else with it after that. So it's somehow trickled down a little bit overnight from the little bit of charge it got. So what I did, I have a smart charger here, and I plugged the battery into that, hooked the battery up to that, and then you have a test for it that's a battery pre-charge status. And it came back reading deeply discharged battery. So for certain the battery has an issue of some sort, at least it's deeply discharged. So I have hooked it up to the battery charger, and it's charging now. And I went back and tried my test that I tried before, running off the battery charger. Everything's just fine. So that raises a couple of issues. One is, why is the battery trickling down? It really shouldn't. Is there a short in the system somewhere? I don't know. Maybe there is. And two, why isn't the battery holding a charge? Perhaps the battery has a problem. I'm not really sure. Anyway, my issue is most definitely related to a deeply discharged battery. I'm going to charge it overnight, take it back off the charger, and find out tomorrow whether or not it fixes my problem. We'll see. One more sidebar, I promise this is it. So I put the battery on the charger yesterday, and it's been on it for about 18 hours. Typically it takes about 12 hours to take a pretty well discharged battery and bring it about all the way back up to 100%. Well, when I came out first thing this morning, the battery charger, which again is a smart charger and has a meter on it, it showed that this had charged up to about just a little bit over 70%, and that's it in roughly 18 hours. Also, the fan was running on the battery charger, which means it's getting warm, and this battery was quite warm. In fact, it's still quite warm, which it shouldn't be at this point because I took it off the charger over an hour ago. Also, I went ahead and got my meter and checked the voltage on the battery, and sure enough it was above 12 volts, but just barely, and it should have been around 12.8 or pushing 13, and it's not. This is a long way of saying the battery is bad, something's wrong with it, and that's really a pity because it's only a year old. Came with the camper, so I can't trade it in. And you know what, that makes a whole lot of sense because this battery should not be discharging down to nothing the way it was with it sitting here, and most of the time with it isolated and turned off. So it couldn't be shorted out. It's a bad battery. The good news is we know it's a bad battery. The bad news is we know it's a bad battery and I have to buy a new one. Well, that's it. Another project completed. You know, for a while there I thought this was an issue of my own making, but this time actually it wasn't. Something actually had gone wrong in the back end back there. On the other side of the coin, I did have that apart behind the camper, and I may, quite frankly, have pulled that wire loose without realizing it, and that could be what caused the problem. However, I did predict that I had a short, and there was an issue with that wire, and I did have one great big short, a massive short, which was a dead battery, and or close to dead, just enough to run a little bit of power on here. Now that I plugged it all back in and got it on the shore power, I let it run for 24 hours or so and charge the battery back up. And lights are working great for the moment, so I think we're in good shape. And this one didn't really take too long. I think probably a total of about 45 minutes I had the whole thing figured out. So I'm very pleased about that. I was really worried I was going to have to tear the back end apart and fix something, but nope. Not this time. This time things went my way. Now I just need to clean up my mess, and then I guess move on to the next project. As usual, questions and comments and of course advice are welcome. Please remember to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on Keeping Up with Papa, Life After Work. Papa out.